Hello, I am here with Hazel Henderson today as part of our fundraising campaign for the Femmebots animated web series. We are interviewing Hazel, who is a futurist, economist, and founder of Ethical Markets Media. She has been tracking trends in the economy for the past 40 years and has provided inspiration and context for the Fembots story since we first crossed paths with her 10 years ago. Hi, Hazel. Thank you for
Hi,
joining us.
nice to see you, Melanie.
Yes.
Yes, I remember that first visit when you came by and you were publishing that newspaper called the Angel Journal.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
very interesting about angel investors.
Yes, that was the month that I was trying to find socially responsible investors.
Yes,
And I did a Google search and I found you on top.
right.
Ga- I gave you a call and then we ended up talking for 2 hours.
Yes, and then I said you have to come up here. So you came here like a homing pigeon.
I did, and then we ended up hanging out for a few hours. So that
Yeah.
was the beginning of a really long friendship, and I'm
Yes.
really grateful for all of the guidance and the mentoring that you've done over the years.
Well, we're grateful to you because you just contributed a lot to helping us with our web site and all that kind of stuff. So it's totally a win-win.
It was for sure. So I wanted to find out what kinds of projects and initiatives you're working on right now.
Well, I think the one that I founded in 2004 called the Ethic Mark Awards for advertising that uplifts the human spirit and society. And a lot of my friends at that time said, "Oh, Hazel, that is really so preachy, and my God." No, because to me, advertising is a $570 billion industry, and most of it is miseducating people and playing on manipulating their fantasies and playing on their psychological weaknesses, and that it could be an incredibly important tool of real education and uplifting, and I thought, well, it's no point trying to criticize them, the advertisers, because they drive the media content almost everywhere in the world now, which is why we hear some stories and we don't hear others, why we hear lots and lots of support for fossil fuels and fossilized sectors of the economy, because it's all those are the companies that are buying the ads. And of course, I was interested in the new economy of solar, wind, and sustainability and all of that, what I call the solar age. And those little companies couldn't even afford to buy advertising, So we were getting this skewed content all the time. And so I thought, well, the best thing to do is to create a carrot. And let's see if we can actually find ad campaigns around the world that actually show what advertising can do.
So these are shown at the SRI conference every year, which is in October. So that's coming up soon.
That's coming up. This year is the first time it's going to be in San Diego. Normally, it used to be SRI in the Rockies.
Yes, in Denver or
and they've kind of renamed it now. It's called the Social and Responsible Impact Investing Conference.
Right.
But it's gone on for 25 years,
Right.
So it's a great venue. And so I'm very happy with that project.
That's great. So, and this is also related to a lot of the things that you write on Ethical Markets Media. And I'm just going to move on to this thing you wrote recently called Mediocrity 2.0. And as I was reading it, it made me realize that I focused so closely on sort of the minutia, which I'm sure all of us do as we're consuming media. And so the big things for the Fembots was this Google manifesto that came out a couple of weeks ago from a man who's in
Right.
his early 20s, who has these ideas about the differences between men and women, and so everybody was kind of in a crazy, tizzy about that. And then once
Yeah.
I started talking to people, they said they traced this back to Gamergate. And after talking with you a little bit before this interview, I realized I needed to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. And you've always done that for me. And so I thought it would be great to bring this perspective to our Femmebots viewers. So can you tell me a little bit more about Mediocrity 2.0 and why more people should read that?
Yes, okay. Well, the Google guy has been taken apart in this issue of the New Scientist out of London, and they pointed out all of the unconscious biases in his manifesto. So if you want to read that, then catch up with that. But
Yeah,
the whole idea,
I think I need to put a few resources, like some links, underneath this interview so that
yeah.
you could take a look
Okay,
at these.
but the actual idea about mediocrity, I wrote about first in my book Building a Win-Win World in 1996,
Mhm.
and in one of the chapters, it was entitled "Mediocrity and the Attention Economy."
Mm.
And what I was saying is that already by then, 1996, most countries in the world, because of all of our new communications, were mediocrities. In other words, media had overcome whatever actual form of government it was. It didn't matter whether you lived in an autocracy or a democracy or a kleptocracy or whatever, or that basically media was leading the game. And whether you were politicians, or whether you were business leaders, or whether you were NGOs, or whether you were revolutionaries, the first thing they would try to do, many years earlier, when there was not the communications we have today, they would capture the radio station. You could say, okay, we've captured the radio station and now we're in charge. The old government, is out the door. And now, of course, it's you capture television, you capture social media, and one way and another. And so as you look into that more deeply, particularly with all the social media companies today, Facebook and all of those, you realize that we have now what I call attention economies. And
Mhm.
they're all vying for your attention.
Mhm.
That becomes the most important thing, is how to capture your eyeballs, and with whatever clickbait they can think of, to keep you on that platform
Right.
or whatever medium it is, you see. And
Yeah.
so I thought, my gosh, isn't that amazing that attention is now the most valuable thing that companies and politicians and everybody are trying to grab, is the attention of the population. So I decided after Trump's election, because partly Trump was elected because of the mediocrity, basically, as a reality TV star, knew how to capture the attention economy.
Mhm.
And then you had the way the mainstream media trying to build their own audiences, just gave him $2 billion worth of free time, just because they wanted to build their own audience. They loved the ratings and all of that. And so Trump is a true creature of the mediocrity. So I thought, hey, I better really update this thing,
Mm.
because if you think how Trump was elected, there's a hedge fund magnate in New York City, a guy called Robert Mercer, who owns and heads up a hedge fund called Renaissance Technologies.
Mhm.
And that churns out, he's a quant, a mathematician, and that churns out money so that he just doesn't know what to do with it. So he funded Breitbart.
Yes.
So
Right.
he owns Breitbart,
Mhm.
and he funded Steve Bannon,
Mhm.
and he funded Kellyanne Conway,
Mhm.
he was first of all trying to back Ted Cruz in the primary. And when Ted Cruz dropped out, they redid the platform, and they decided, okay, Trump would be their vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that they were so interested in Trump's ideas, because basically he doesn't have any ideas.
No, he doesn't.
But they thought that they could capture Trump and put him in the White House. So anyway, there was the game that was being played was that they captured Trump and put him in the White House. And they thought he and Mercer and his gang and the Breitbart folks, and this group, the big data group in London called Cambridge Analytica, which they also fund, that does all of the psychographic polling, mm-hmm. Which helped to get the votes in and all of that. They realized that they had hijacked the Republican Party, because the Republican Party didn't really, like Trump, and a lot of them didn't want him there. Right. So anyway, then you had this double game where the Republicans said, okay, well, we'll back Trump, we'll hijack Trump. And so what we've got now is the war is coming out in the open, where Bannon's gone back to Breitbart, and he's going to have more control over Trump now with his weapon, as he called it, which is Breitbart, than he had when he was in the White House. So stay tuned.
See, Hazel, I basically learned everything from you, because in the Femmebots animated web series, I call it the media war zone. And when you use these words like weapons and Twitter storm, and there's all these very warlike type of language that people are using when they are using social media. So I actually have a scene where, there's these fembots holding guns with tweets shooting out of them. And the tweets are all of our isms, whether it's like racism, sexism, extremism, so that's some of the commentary that I'm making on.
Very good. Yes, and the currency. The currency of the mediocrity and its attention economies is meme. That's the currency, and you're right. See the memes, whether it's racism, sexism, IoT. Now everybody's talking about the Internet of Things. That was a meme created by an advertising agency. Doesn't mean anything. So I wrote an editorial which goes worldwide. And you don't see it really in the US, called "The Idiocy of Things."
Yes, I saw that one.
I was like, hey, this is insane. Yeah. Why do I want my toaster connected to the internet?
Right.
And then in that article, I was writing about, these horror stories where your refrigerator is connected to the internet, and it knows that you got off your diet and you went and you binged out of the refrigerator in the middle of the night, and then they alert your insurance company and they cancel your policy.
Oh my God.
And then there was this other horror story. This is a true story. That the guy sent his payment in for his mortgage, and somehow it got hung up or went into spam or whatever. And so he comes home one night, and the smart lock won't activate, and he can't get into his house because the insurance, the mortgage company has locked him out. And so he has to break a window to get into his own house, and then he has.
It's kind of like the singularity, right? Because the bots have taken over his life already. They've got more power.
Yes, and yet we had George Orwell wrote all about this in 1984. And that book now is a bestseller again.
Yeah,
everybody realized, oh my God, Big Brother is watching me.
Well, they actually made a Broadway play in New York called 1984. It's I've seen a few ads for it. It's really popular right now. People are very fascinated with it, but I think they're not really sure how to react or what to do about it. It's like, yes, okay, this is our reality now, which makes me kind of want to move on to this next question about an article you wrote for CS Wire about AI algorithms and assumptions.
Yes.
And at the beginning of the article, you acknowledged the unconscious gender and racial biases in algorithms. And then you ended with the suggestion that tech companies should be paying every user for each and every bit of their personal information rather than, just us giving it away for free. So I wanted to see how these two concepts were related. I wanted to understand that a little bit better.
Yes. Well, you see, basically, the way that these internet platforms evolved, like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they evolved under a sort of free market ideology, which said that whoever started the thing owns the network and the platform. And network, if you understand network theory, and there's a lot of wonderful books about network theory that help you understand networks, like Yoichi Benkler's book called The Wealth of Networks,
Okay.
and Manuel Castells and his books on networks that explain that networks are not inherently distributed and democratic, that networks can be extremely hierarchical if you allow the platform to be owned by a small group of investors like on Silicon Valley. And so I was just reading this. This is from Foreign Affairs. Yeah, I'll hold it up because it's really good.
Hold it a little higher. The false prophecy of hyperconnection.
Yes.
Okay.
And here's our friend Zuckerberg, see the photograph there of Zuckerberg. And this is a wonderful article in Foreign Affairs. And it's saying that, Zuckerberg has this sort of fantasy, this utopian fantasy. And like a lot of Silicon Valley people do, that, we are going to connect everybody and it's going to make this global democracy and everything else. And it's totally masks the fact that it's breeding inequality. And the only reason that he has billions and billions of dollars to run around, and they say he's going to run for president in 2020 and all of this, is because of the unequal thing where all of the users like you and me are supposed to give all of our information. And the business model of all these companies is to scoop up all that information and sell it to advertisers and insurance companies and all the rest of it. So what I proposed, there's a lot of different ways you could deal with this. Zuckerberg is now saying, okay, well, we have to have a guaranteed income. The only thing is that everybody now has to have a guaranteed income provided by the state. And that's an idea that's been floating around for 30 years. I've written about it many, many times. But that leaves the structure in order. It still leaves the Zuckerbergs in charge, owning the platforms. And that's the thing, that these are now monopolies and oligopolies. And of course, they're creating this enormous riches, for Bezos and Bill Gates and all the rest of it. So the other way you could go, like Jaron Lanier, who wrote a book, Who Owns the Future? Which I did a review of in 2012. And he said, okay, our algorithms and software is good enough now that why not just have these companies pay each individual who signs on as a user for every single bit and byte that they put onto their page, whether it's on Facebook or wherever, and that those would really mount up, and could equalize the situation.
Yeah.
So another way to go, which I thought of, which could help to sort of at least open up the discussion, and I bought all of the URLs, is the idea that what we need is a new form of habeas corpus. And this was the law in my country. I grew up in Britain, in my mother country, in the year 1215. um, they defeated the king, the barons defeated the king and said that this law from now on, called habeas corpus, which in Latin means owning your own body.
Right.
It
Okay.
says each one of us own our body. And I was saying, okay, let's update it for the information age and call it I habeas corpus. In other words, information habeas. But I also own my brain and I own my head,
Right.
you know. And so that was the principle on which this whole thing would rest. You see, so it isn't people just saying, okay, I want to be paid for putting my pictures up on Facebook. Every pixel, I want to be paid for. There would be a legal justification based on a law that goes back 600 years. That you do actually own your head and you own your brain and you own all the thoughts that come out of it and all of your information. And so this gave it legal standing.
Right.
So all it is
what we're doing, it's like we're uploading our brains to the social networks.
Crazy. Your most valuable, this is your most valuable possession.
And isn't this how scientists are creating artificial intelligence?
Yes.
They're basing it off of this information. Like all of our Google searches are essentially becoming these artificial brains for robots.
That's right. That's right. And so then the question that I asked in that article, which I called artificial intelligence plus algorithms equals assumptions. And so I'm proposing a new standard that says that every algorithm has to be regularly unpacked to see if the assumptions within it are still valid, or to the extent to which those assumptions might be biased. And there's a couple of beautiful books that I've reviewed recently on this, and I can't remember the names of them now, but they're all the books that I review are on our website. We have a section called Books and Reviews, and one which goes into this in great detail. She has she's a mathematician who teaches mathematics and had worked as a quant for a hedge fund, and suddenly realized, oh my God, this is awful, And she has a whole bunch of case studies of how algorithms just wrecked people's lives. Like, somebody who went for a job and there was some kind of computer program within the interviewing process, for the company. And there was no way of getting around it, that anyone with certain things in their application would just get spit out. Some of it was based on race, and some of it was based on gender, and some of it was based just basically on ignorance, And so she has talked also about this same kind of rule, that every algorithm and every model has to get unpacked regularly to see, what those assumptions were. So there's a lot of attention to this now. There's another book came out that was written by a renegade programmer from one of these Silicon Valley firms, and he was on 60 Minutes, on CBS 60 Minutes. He talks about how he was paid, that was his job, he was paid to learn all about psychology and motivation to make their programs as addictive as possible, whether it's clickbait or whatever it was, to keep people on that site.
Right. Yeah, and that's not that difficult now. Everybody's on it, which is another reason why I wanted to make this animation, because when I walk around New York City, in my mind, everybody is already a robot, because it's like we have these remote controls. These are our remote controls, and then it actually leads us as we're walking, and our faces are stuck in it, and it's like it's become us. And when we look at it, we see our images, and I call it selfie-centeredness, where you're very, you become unaware of yourself and the people around you. Now we have a president who embodies that, and he's trickling that culture down to the next generation as if it's like emphasizing the culture already. And then it's creating a we're losing our connectedness. Like this interview right now, I could have been doing it with you in person, but then I was like, oh, let me play with my technology. So I'm just as bad. I'm definitely not judgmental towards the whole thing. I'm more concerned about people's awareness of it. And I think that's why I'm writing this story. There's a Turing test that scientists give to the AI to test their self-awareness. And the jokes that I put into the series are like, well, maybe we should give humans Turing tests, because I don't walk around and I don't see anybody being really aware of what they are actually putting out into the world.
It is definitely changing our psychology in all kinds of ways. And I mean, I don't have a smartphone because I do not want to be tracked by GPS.
Right.
I do not need it.
Right.
I prefer to have my alone time because that's when I can think and reflect. And there's something different about reading books than there is about seeing things either on any kind of a screen.
Right.
There's a different kind of a mental process. They've now verified that, with brain scans, that it activates a different part. It more activates your forebrain, whereas seeing stuff on screens activates more your amygdala.
Is this the subconscious
fight or flight?
factor?
Yeah, that's the more emotional fight or flight thing.
Right.
And so, it's so funny. I got to the end. I just finished reading this article because this magazine just came in. And he talks a lot about how people have to really learn network theory, and he was saying that information network theorists, the very best network theorists, have always understood that there were three rules. Let's see if I can find it.
There are three rules.
There's three rules, yes,
okay.
for really understanding and for dealing, with networks. Once you really understand how networks work, let's see if I can find it. But the first rule is turn off your computer.
Okay.
The second rule is don't have a computer.
Okay.
And, basically what they're talking about, and I talk about this, you've heard me talk about this before, you have a conversation with techie type people, and they think that a social network is a package of software. No. I call it warmware. It's real human beings, And I had a couple of friends of mine staying over the weekend, a couple of guys, who manage money and are really into these robot investing models.
Yes.
You're all investing. And so I'm listening to all of this, and what I'm trying to do is to lure these two young men back into their bodies and out of their heads, and I'm trying to get them to remember the delights of the texture of daily life. So I have them in the kitchen helping me cut up tomatoes and things for lunch. And then I get them in the pool and swimming and all that. And then we get into a three-way hug. And I say, look, guys, this is warmware.
Right.
Oh, so wonderful.
Right.
Oh, this is what I think.
That's what I'm saying. Like that, people are really disconnected from their hearts.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to call it warmware.
Warmware.
Okay. As long as it doesn't sound like wormware.
No.
So I think, so we've been talking now for about 30 minutes, and I just wanted to give you a chance to say anything else about some of the conversations or things you've written about artificial intelligence. I know you've had many conversations with NASA Chief Scientist Dennis Bushnell about machines taking over human society. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add to our interview before we say goodbye to our viewers?
I would just like to say that this debate that's going on right now, where robots really are taking over people's jobs, and the main driver of this really is Silicon Valley. I mean, if you just look at the push for, quote, driverless cars,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're asking for enormous government subsidies, 3 billion they were asking for, Google, to promote the development of driverless cars. Why? 3 million people earn their living driving cars. It's an entry-level job. And so the whole debate, I would like to see more and more people jump into this debate. And I remember a bumper sticker I used to have on my car, and it said, "Technology is the answer." But what is the question?
Okay. Okay.
And the point is, as a science policy wonk, that's me. I spent 6 years in Washington as a science policy wonk at the National Science Foundation and the U.S. Office of Technology Assessment. And that's what it was all about, was saying, okay, these are all of the different technologies that we know how to produce, but we have to put our human values first. Why do we actually want this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, perfect example was supersonic transport planes at the time, where, okay, it would zip you from New York to London in 2 hours, and then you'd be stuck in traffic for 2 hours from Heathrow into the city of London, and the same at the other end. So, this is not systemic thinking. Mm-hmm. Same with nuclear power. Of course it's not fossil free, because they have to use coal to enrich the uranium. And then it's carried on trucks, and then we have all this waste. So there's a lot of technologies that we don't need to develop. And we have to start really looking and exercising those choices. So that's my basic message.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining the Femmebots, Hazel Henderson. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a very busy researcher and communicator. I invite Fembot viewers to check out Hazel's website, ethicalmarkets.com. She's got all kinds of articles, not only written by herself, but by an entire network that she built over, Hazel, it's not 40 years, it's longer, isn't it?
It's a long, long time. I've devoted my life to this. I've had a wonderful life, and I've done exactly what I wanted to do.
Right. And
I feel incredibly grateful that I have all these friends around the world, which are real friends, not Facebook friends.
Yes, I know.
Real friends, that I've met and stay in touch with. And so I love that networking, of people who are exploring all these similar ideas about, how we humans can evolve, frankly.
Right.
Because we are going to evolve into global citizens, whether we like it or not. There's no way you can put all this toothpaste back in the tube. Right. But we've created all of this technology, and now we have to learn how to manage it and how to discriminate. What is it we don't want?
Right.
And so,
thank you. Yeah, thank you again for joining us. For those of you that are just learning about the Femmebots, it's an animated web series that I've been working on with a few writers and artists based in New York. And our goal is to finish raising a little bit more than $9,000 by September 5th. We are using the crowdfunding website Kickstarter. Hazel actually has a whole section on her website about crowdfunding and how that's also changing the game of finance and how people get things started, like projects like this. And we hope to use this cash to fix up our sound design animation editing, and pay some of our voiceover actors before submitting to the Tribeca Film Institute before November 5th. And then lastly, I just want to thank all of our supporters and sponsors thus far. Conquer.com. I'm wearing the t-shirt. It's probably backwards. ACM.org. They're the Association for Computing Machinery that gives a Turing Award every year for excellence in artificial intelligence tests. And I might be saying that wrong, so you might want to look it up on the website. And then all the folks at DC Femtech, DC Night Owls, and the Miami Writers Association. So thank you very much. Have a great day. Thank you again, Hazel. We love you.
Good luck with your fundraising. You deserve it.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh,
Bye.
and it's my birthday today, so thank you for joining me on my birthday.
Good for
All
you.
right. Okay.
Take care, Melanie. Thanks.
Bye.
Good luck.
Thank you.